I'm Timothy Vigil, and this is Just Another Word podcast, the Word of the Day podcast for storytellers. P is for paradox. I must be cruel only to be kind. William Shakespeare, Hamlet. At first glance, a paradox might look like a mistake. It's a statement or a situation that seems to contradict itself. It pulls in two opposite directions at once. But a paradox isn't a lie. It's a riddle, and it requires mental work. When you put two seemingly impossible ideas together, the friction between them creates a spark that reveals a deeper, more complex truth than a simple statement ever could. The word paradox comes from Greek, the word paradoxos, meaning contrary to expectation. It's the moment where your brain says, that can't be right, but your heart says, and yet it is. In storytelling, we use paradoxes all the time to bypass the easy answers. Hamlet's cruelty is his kindness because in his world, a soft touch would just lead to more death. To save the person that he loves, he has to hurt them. It's a logic that only makes sense once you stop looking at the surface and start looking at the soul. It is a contradiction, but it is one that reveals a deeper truth. He is cruel to be kind, saying that short-term pain is necessary for the long-term salvation. Some other contradictions that we might commonly hear are less is more, because stripping away clutter reveals what is essential and what is truly worth spending our time on. The cowardly hero is one that we hear constantly in shows, television, books, because true bravery can only exist when someone is scared. You've likely heard that in many things, not least of all the first episode of Game of Thrones. See, paradoxes are incredibly important in stories, and one of the great ways that we can use this is with our characters. Many of the great characters in fiction are living, breathing paradoxes. They are two things at once, oftentimes two opposite things. And the tension between those two things is what makes them feel real. Think of Aragorn from The Lord of the Rings, particularly in the film franchise. He is a paradox of identity. He is the rightful king of Gondor, born to a lineage of absolute power and majesty. Yet he is also Strider, a weather-beaten ranger who sleeps in the dirt and hides in the shadows. He is the highest of the high and the lowest of the low. If he were just a king, he might be a statue. If he were just a ranger, he might be a footnote. But as a paradox, the king in exile, that is what makes us lean in. We are forced to do the mental work of reconciling his muddy boots with his ultimate destiny. In that reconciliation, we find a character who is profoundly human. He draws us in because of the inner workings and how those inner workings are intermixed. As a writer, you should look for the paradox in every scene, and particularly in your protagonist. If your character is brave all the time, they become boring. But if they're brave but paralyzed by specific fear, they become an interesting paradox. In Brandon Sanderson's epic series, The Stormlight Archive, one of his main characters, Kaladin, is deeply afraid of losing anyone close to him because he has failed to protect those around him over and over again. This conflict inside of him makes him this very interesting and powerful character. And though he is growing into a superhero, his fear of loss is holding him back. He is this paradox of someone who can seemingly save everyone and someone who feels like they can save no one. Internal conflict is a core way to create a paradox. Giving your character two core values that cannot be true at the same time, a pacifist who must pick up a sword to protect their children is a paradox that drives an entire plot. Or you can create a thematic paradox. Use your world building to reflect contradiction. A city that is beautiful but decaying, or crowded but empty, tells the reader more about the atmosphere than a list of adjectives ever could. But don't explain your paradox to your reader immediately. Let them sit in the contradiction. When the reader finally understands why the hero was cruel to be kind, the emotional payoff is much stronger because they had to solve the riddle themselves. Let the paradox live and breathe. Let us see it and understand it. Because a paradox is proof that the truth is rarely simple. It's the knot in the wood that makes the grain beautiful. As a storyteller, don't be afraid to contradict. In fact, contradiction is what makes stories worth reading. Embrace the items that don't seem to fit together perfectly, because it's the space between opposites that your characters and your readers truly start to feel connected. You have been listening to Just Another Word podcast with your host, Timothy Vigil. For more information, go to timothyvigil.com.